All right, today we're going to head back in time, way back. We're going to explore the incredible story of the very first permanent English settlement in North America, Jamestown.
But you gotta understand, this wasn't some grand, heroic adventure right from the get-go. Nope, this was a brutal struggle for survival. A story so desperate that people were pushed to the absolute limit, doing the unthinkable just to see another day.
So, how did it get so bad? And, maybe more importantly, how did this tiny, struggling outpost on the edge of a vast continent manage to hang on against all odds? Let's dive in.
Our story kicks off in December of 1606. You've got these three small ships leaving England, but they're not sailing for freedom or anything like that. This was all about business. A company called the Virginia Company of London funded the whole thing, and they were basically hoping these settlers would strike it rich and find a bunch of gold.
And that journey across the Atlantic? It was a total nightmare. Imagine being one of the 104 men and boys just crammed onto these tiny ships for months on end. It was so crowded, sickness spread like wildfire. By the time they finally saw the Virginia coast in April 1607, they were just completely wiped out, desperate to find a safe place to build their new home.
So, they sail up this big river, which they named the James River, after their king, of course, and they pick a spot that, on paper, seemed like a genius move for their new settlement.
And you can see their logic, right? On one hand, it's a peninsula, so it's easy to defend, and it's far enough from the coast to hide from any Spanish patrols. Perfect! But the huge downside? It was a swamp. A hot, humid, sticky swamp crawling with mosquitoes carrying deadly diseases. And the water in the river? It was salty and totally undrinkable. This was a massive mistake, and they wouldn't realize just how bad it was until it was way too late.
Even with all those problems, their number one priority was safety. So they got right to work. First, they cleared the land. Then, they put up this massive, triangular fort made of tall logs. To top it off, they built cannon towers on each corner and started putting up houses, a church, and a storehouse inside. This was their fortress against a new and, what they thought was, a dangerous world.
But here's the thing. That giant fort they built, it couldn't protect them from the real dangers which were already starting to brew both inside and outside its walls.
Yeah, this was basically a recipe for disaster. See, the company had sent over a bunch of gentlemen. These were guys from rich families who had probably never done a day of hard labor in their lives. They were there to find gold, not to farm or hunt. They had like zero survival skills. On top of that, you've got diseases from the swamp, poisonous river water, and a really tense relationship with the local Powhatan people. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. Right when things were at their worst, this guy, Captain John Smith, steps in. He was a tough, experienced soldier, and he took charge with one really simple, really harsh rule. This quote says it all. Basically, if you don't work, you don't eat. He forced everyone, even the fancy gentlemen, to get their hands dirty. Honestly, his leadership was probably the only thing that kept the colony from completely collapsing right then and there.
But then, disaster struck again. Smith got badly injured in a gunpowder explosion and had to sail back to England. And without him, the colony just completely fell apart. The work stopped, and the local Powhatan trapped the settlers inside their fort, cutting off any access to food. This led to the absolute lowest point in Jamestown's history. 60. Just think about that number. That's how many people were left alive after that one horrible winter. Out of hundreds. They were starving, sick, they'd lost all hope. So they did the only thing they could think of. They gave up. They abandoned the fort, got on their ship, and started sailing for home. Jamestown was finished.
But then, just as they're sailing away, something incredible happens. They run into new ships coming from England, loaded with supplies and a new governor. It was like a last-second rescue. Jamestown got a second chance. And it was three key things that finally turned this whole disaster around. Okay, so first up, you have this colonist named John Rolfe. And he has this brilliant idea. He starts experimenting with a new kind of tobacco seed that he brought over from the West Indies. It was a lot sweeter than the local stuff.
And it turns out, Virginia's soil was absolutely perfect for growing it. This new tobacco became a massive hit back in England, and suddenly, for the very first time, the colony had something valuable to sell. It became what we call a cash crop, meaning you don't grow it to eat, you grow it specifically to sell for profit. And that cash saved Jamestown's economy.
But a colony needs more than just money to survive, right? It needs people. It needs a real community. And that's the second big change. In 1619, a ship arrived with about 90 women. Now this was a total game changer. It meant settlers could get married, start families, and actually build a future there. Jamestown started to feel less like a temporary camp and more like a permanent town.
And the third major development? It also happened in that same incredible year, 1619. And this is where the story gets really complex, because what happened in 1619 would shape the future of America in two totally opposite, conflicting ways.
Yeah, in just that 1 year, in this one little settlement, the groundwork was laid for two of the most powerful and contradictory ideas in all of American history: freedom and slavery. And they started in the exact same place.
So on one hand, you have the creation of the House of Burgesses. This was huge. For the first time ever in America, male landowners in the colony could actually elect people to represent them and make laws. This was the very beginning of American democracy, the idea that people should have a say in their own government.
But then, just 1 month later, a different kind of ship arrived. This one was carrying about 20 captured people from Africa. They were sold to the colonists as enslaved laborers, because that new cash crop, tobacco, required a huge amount of work to grow. And this really lays it out, doesn't it? In the summer of 1619, you have the birth of representative government, and just a few weeks later, in the same place, you have the beginning of the institution of slavery in America. Both of these things, democracy and slavery, were planted in the same soil, in the same year.
So when you look back through all of that horror, the starvation, the disease, the conflict, Jamestown actually made it. It survived. And in doing so, it created a kind of blueprint for the colonies that would come later, especially in the American South. A society based on farming cash crops with a representative government, but tragically, an economy built on the backs of enslaved people.
So that leaves us with this huge question. What is Jamestown really? Is it the start of the American dream, this land of opportunity and self-government? Or is it the beginning of an American nightmare, a story built on greed and exploitation? And the truth is, it's both. It's this complicated, messy mix of freedom and oppression, a contradiction that America is still grappling with to this very day.